Whereas I think, you know, the time spent in power yoga and in Baptiste yoga, for me, was a great way to stoke a lot of curiosity about the practice, to like first fan that flame. Do you know what I mean? Whereas Bikram got me committed to doing yoga, to the practice of yoga, and to buying into how it was going to impact my life on a holistic scale. Whereas the asana side of power yoga got me to dive in and see like the potentiality of how this practice could grow, why I could do this for the next 30 years. Whereas Bikram, I quite like, but the method for me, it's hard to think about doing that every single day for the next 30 years. Whereas in a more wide open path of asana, it's really easy to say, I have all these foundations, this groundwork, and like, look at all these places it can go. I know I can stay engaged and have the balance of it in that kind of method.
That's what I think is really interesting, even as I consider my own journey in this conversation. The first method that I really appreciated was Ashtanga. And I am horrendous at it.
It's
like
not necessarily for you.
Yeah, and we all end up where we do because of who we are. So it's really important to acknowledge that. And so I just remember when I was doing Ashtanga every morning, like my knees hurting all day long, and just like the general soreness of it, and
the general prereqs.
The general but again, the soreness in my body due to the lack of natural predisposition for that practice, and yet because I could do jump throughs and pickups, I was like, you know, capable of like kind of going through it in some capacity.
Yeah.
And it was just interesting, and it really was one of my first forays into understanding and diving deeper into the framework of different methods of practice. And I moved on from Ashtanga, but it was really hard for me to understand the framework of power yoga as much, because it was so simple in many ways.
What do you mean?
You do a lot of lunge poses and a lot of vinyasas.
In Ashtanga or in power?
In power.
Yeah. Certainly.
Not again. These are all observations. I always feel like I want to frame this anytime I'm talking about some of this stuff.
I don't think it's a critical item.
Yeah. I just always want that to be on the table.
So, what didn't you understand from the power yoga perspective versus
it was hard for me to identify a method as much. Like with Ashtanga, you're like, there's a method to this, and you're there in a room with other people who are part of this method, and they're really into this method.
And there's somewhere also in Ashtanga
and it's
room,
early in the morning.
Yeah, they're obviously dedicated, and you can see people all at different stages along the path.
Yes.
In one room in a Mysore.
Yes.
Which is different in a generalized vinyasa class, where maybe you see that. It's more outliers, but I'd say the middle of the bell curve is a lot bigger in a general vinyasa class versus a Mysore classroom.
Yeah, like what I remember from power yoga was the energy, and like loving the energy of it in the popular classes, and things being like really jamming and really positive, I guess. Like the community side of it. But again, we were so young for the community, but just like the energy of it was so inspiring in a lot of ways, and interesting and fun. And Ashtanga was just like such a counter to that, right?
Well, it's so much more introspective and almost a bit solemn in like the energy in a Mysore room. Do you know what I mean? It's just so much breath and focus. There's no, like, power yoga is chatty.
Yeah, it is, and in a lot of ways. And so it was so interesting to pair that, and then you go into, again, like I obviously have, spent time doing Smart Flow as well, and so you're pairing like those three, kind of things together, like the intention of Annie's system, the method of Ashtanga, and kind of like the raw energy, and I don't know, it's almost like let's just do it kind of vibe of power.
Yeah, it's a little bit of just do it.
It's a bit of that Nike energy.
Well, there's a little like raw behind.
Yeah, totally.
Behind it.
And so it was interesting to kind of like begin to compare those things, and then diversifying study into all the different areas that we now explore, and how awakening yoga kind of fits into those things is. It's cool to see, like again, studying a few different methods now, or like trying to study them. One of them, which I
was
won't
just
speak
gonna-
to, the only reason I won't is just because it is the hardest thing to study. Like they intentionally make it hard to
There's
study.
they like don't want you to do
They
it.
don't want you to do it, and they do want you to do it at the same time. And it's very
It's like the most intense game of hard to get.
yeah. So like I know I do it out on our balcony a lot, and people probably like look at me like I'm a crazy person. Like the people next door were having a little party, and I'm like, on their deck or whatever, and I'm just on the other side of this wall, and a few people like peek over to kind of see what I'm doing. I'm just like, dude, I don't
Guy
know.
with hair down to his
You-
waist and a beard doing pseudo tai chi on a Friday evening.
It's a vibe, dude. It's totally a vibe. But it's learning, and it's super interesting to me to like to try to consider the method and consider how people teach their method, because I think whether you like what we do or not, whoever you are, and honestly, I hope you love it. I really thoroughly believe in it with my whole heart. But the way we teach our method is very thorough.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And then I study other methods, and it's like the opposite of that, or it's like ambiguous to a degree.
Almost purposefully ambiguous.
There's definitely
Maybe not even almost, actually.
Yeah, purposefully ambiguous in many ways, and it's just interesting to see how so many people are trying to get to the same place from different angles.
Well, I think that everyone has a different purpose to some degree behind their method, their practice. And it's interesting from a historical perspective too, like whether or not certain aspects of practice or teachers or lineages or schools of yoga were really trying to, like for lack of a better term, market to the masses, right? You have a teacher like Chris Macharya who was really trying to bring students in and do this style of yoga, this more heavily like aerobic, asana-based style. And then you also have other styles where it's like, I don't care if I have students.
Yeah.
I don't care. You know what I mean? I'm not saying I don't, but like there are other styles where it's like, look, you either do it or you don't.
Yeah.
Whatever. You like it? Cool. You don't? Cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's obviously historical precedent for it, but it's also still really apparent today. There is just some things that there's such a movement for yoga for everybody, yoga for every body, those kinds of things. But there's also a lot of styles and methods that like could give two shits if everybody can do it.
I think
It's just
most.
not
I think
a-
most
a-
methods
yes, a
are
lot.
like that, and even when people say like all levels of practice can take this, which by the way,
It's not true.
It's not true actually. I don't want. I don't. Yeah, she's definitely a student of ours. A student of ours named Raina wrote something about this.
Yeah, Raina talked about
and
it.
I thought it was awesome, because she was just essentially saying like, let's stop labeling things as like for all levels when like it's clearly not.
Yes.
And I thought that was such a wonderful point, because it's true. You know what I mean? Like, while we aim for Awakening Yoga to be an approachable style for as many people as possible, saying it is for everybody is
Just not true.
Is just not true.
Yes.
But nothing is for everybody. Not one thing in this world besides air and water and some form of nutrition is and sleeping is for everybody. You know what I mean? Like
Naps
Yeah.
are for everybody.
yeah, but I think it's so important to acknowledge that a little bit with yoga and with a method of anything, because like a method is a path towards a specific destination. It's a way you're choosing to do something, and some of that choice is your own, and some of that choice is the way you entered this world or the way you currently exist in this world, and that's part of it. And so owning that really begins to open the door to where you can go next, and to what you can do, and to how you want to find joy in your experience.